I'm excited about the Great Reset because the Great Reset is forcing a parallel economy and a parallel society because something needs to exist while the other one disintegrates. And that disintegration is already happening.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum, and the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. I have with me Craig Simpson from Radiant Creators. A lot of positive feedback about our conversations. It's going to be a positive, hopeful show about the changes coming on the solstice this year. The 21st of December 2020 marks so many cycles overlapping. If you were to take off the back of a Swiss watch and look inside, you would see how many gears that overlap. Well, the 21st of December 2020 here at the solstice is just like the back after you remove and take a look into the deep gears of time, space, and cosmology. What we see on the planet right now with all of this chaos and duress and torture of the human spirit, we can undo that in a flick of a blink of an eye here coming up. And I think that's the reason that we're being kept 6 feet apart, because our bioresonance field will become so powerful as a force of the human spirit, the human species, that it can override these elite in about a fifth of an eighth of a second, and they would lose their power. So in order for these elite to try to keep their power, they're going to have to try to ride on top of a natural cycle and prevent us from coming together to use our power. So what's going to overlap on the 21st here, you might ask? The solstice itself is a powerful time, and it's been marked through antiquity. If you look around the planet, how many ancient sites are there that are marking the solstice, either the winter solstice or the summer solstice? Thousands. And there are, everywhere you look across all continents and all centuries and all time, they are marking these days. It's so powerful. But then when we look at the shift from earth into air, talking about astrology and how these signs moving from a denser medium into a heavier, faster medium, cryptocurrency would be an example of something moving faster. But then at the same time, we're coming into the very first minute of the first degree of Aquarius transiting in now that 2,160-year time period of this. We're entering in that 26,000-year loop of the precession of the equinox. We're coming into this very first minute. So if you know anything about longitude, latitude, and sailing and marking time and where you are on the meridians or wherever you might be at, this includes aircraft, that minute, that degree is broken down into 60 minutes, and we're in the very first second of the very first minute of the very first degree heading into Aquarius on a new 2,000-year cycle. On top of the planets Jupiter and Saturn conjuncting so closely that they haven't been this close since 1226 AD. We're shifting of an age in not only the medium of our, existence on the Earth here in our solar system from Earth to air, but then we're coming into Aquarius, water, it flows. All of these energies are changing. Why do you think the Great Reset's here? You're being forced to reset under a new set of rules that the elite are going to set up and then set you on top of, because their pyramidal top-down structure is about to shatter. It can't exist. That was an old Earth heaviness set paradigm and set way of rulership over the planet. The elite took that. Well, as we move into this new energy, that structure is not going to exist any longer. It can't hold state.
So instead of letting things organically arise and elite losing their power, they're saying, all right, the new system's coming, the new vibration's here, and we're going to set the new rules, and you're going to have to exist in our new rules where we're still the leaders. So we're going to reset everything. You can't breathe, you can't come together, and you can't use your human energy to overthrow us, and then we're going to control how you move from this point forward. We know what the dates are. We know what the times are. It's time for us to take our power back. Craig, thanks for joining me, and I know what you're talking about. Cryptocurrency is a part of this. The shift that we're seeing. Remember back in 2019, let's go back to October 2019. Can anybody remember that far back how the world was? 22 countries in the world had mass protests of millions of people on the street demanding their governments remove central banking, the governments themselves change the structure of leadership and rulership over the people. 22 countries, millions and millions and millions of people every day on the streets, and then suddenly COVID came, boom, that just got washed away. Do you even remember that far back? That's such an ancient blip in history. I think that's not even a year. It's just barely a year. And I mean, people can't even remember that far back. They're so inundated by COVID. All I remember COVID. Nobody ever organized back then. Like the organizational capabilities has been totally forgotten. Now just Cato. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Craig, thanks for joining. Appreciate you coming on again. Craig Simpson, Radiant Creators, also an incredible podcast, and what great value in the leaders that you interview on how we can make our world a better place.
Yeah, well, I can definitely say that the Great Reset is happening on a lot of levels, and crypto, since I do a lot of crypto stuff, that's one thing I do find. There's a great character. His name is Michael Saylor, and he owns, or he's the CEO, I guess, of MicroStrategies, and they are kind of a corporate intelligence company. And he said something great about crypto recently in an interview, and it kind of matches the Great Reset, because I think the way that awakening humanity, the sovereign individual, the spiritual warrior, the powerful being, the way they're dealing with the Great Reset is they're creating a parallel society, a parallel economy, because you really can't fight the system with its own rules. It's a nice thought. You can write your congressman and your senator, and you can do those things. It doesn't hurt, but I think the deck is stacked against us there. But you can just stop being a part of their framework, the matrix that they've created. And so central banking itself, the need to monitor every transaction, I think is coming into people's consciousness right now. But Muchin, that character, was talking about how we need to monitor personal wallets. So if you have a personal crypto wallet, like a hardware wallet or a software wallet, you're not keeping it on an exchange. You have it like offline on your own device. They want an ability to know your customer on all those. So he wants to push for legislation for that, which is really pretty intense. People are starting to wonder. They're going, well, wait a second. Why do you need to know everything I do? So we're in this time of a great reset where I think cryptocurrency plays a big role in it, because people are becoming aware of things they never were aware of. Most people just put their money in the bank and they went, this is good, right? My money's in the bank. That's where you put it. It's where you keep it. It's easier. I can use my debit card, etc., or my credit card. But now they're realizing, well, wait a second. I've got crypto, so I got to have my Bitcoin that makes money, or I could have it in stable coins making interest, whatever, and I can spend that crypto on a credit card, a crypto credit card. No one needs to know about it. But then you've got Mnuchin, I think his name is, saying that we need to do away with that we need to be able to see every transaction you do. And people are saying, well, wait a second. I knew my bank was always spying on me, but I just figured that's the way it was. But now I have DeFi, as I say, decentralized finance. There's a parallel economy and parallel financial services that are being created in spite of the Great Reset. And I think that's really one of the huge answers to a lot of our problems today, is that you simply, I love that walk away movement that existed or still exists. You just walk away from the hold system and walk into one that actually functions and is life-giving and also is moral, so that you have a currency that actually is real, like Bitcoin, a store of value that is real. You can say gold and silver are real too, of course they are, but get into sovereign money, and then all of a sudden you become healthier, you become wiser, you become more hope for the world. That's something I'm seeing with the parallel society, parallel economy that's being created in response to the Great Reset. Because they're going to do the Great Reset. That's going to happen, I think. There's not much you can do about it. But you can already have been ahead of the game because with the new Aquarian energy coming in, Aquarius is way, way faster than slow-moving Pisces. I mean, that's making a parallel reality, a parallel economy. And who cares about the Great Reset? Let it come. Those who are able to ride that Aquarian lightning bolt, they're already in crypto, or they're going to get in crypto, or they're going to be, buying metals. I'm starting to get hopeful because I'm seeing this parallel society being made. It's kind of like a fringe dweller. You're in this 3D world, if you want to call it that, of the central bankers, of the Great Reset, or you can be like in the 4 or the 5D world of sovereign money, a moral way of doing business and making money. It's a wonderful time. And so Michael Saylor, he's definitely invested very, very heavily into Bitcoin. I think they put like 500 million plus of the company's capital into Bitcoin. And one of the reasons he's doing that is because, and others are doing it, other companies are beginning to follow this. And of course, also wealthy individuals, because they know that if they're watching the dollar strength index and such, they're watching it, they know that if you just sit on your money, you're losing so much buying power every quarter, every day, especially as we move into 2021. It's like, 23.6% of all dollars that exist were printed in 2020. That's insane. Think about what that's done to the value of the dollar. And watching the dollar strength index, every time that, money printing, bailouts, stimulus is talked about, the dollar strength just goes down, because some people might be excited and they're having a hard time. But the thing is, I have never in my lifetime, I'm only 50 and I've only been paying attention to it for a decade or two, but I mean, you look at it historically, the dollar strength is it's insane. We haven't seen this kind of craziness since the Great Depression. If it wasn't for credit, I think that so many Americans would be so screwed right now. But the whole system is about to just grind to a stop. I mean, if Biden wins, I know plenty of big players like our common friend Bob Kudla and many traders over there that trade with that group. They all have their buys in. They are ready to short commercial real estate the second that guy gets confirmed, because they know it's just going downhill so fast. So, like I say, it's a lot of rambling I just did, but I'm excited about the Great Reset, because the Great Reset is forcing a parallel economy and a parallel society, because something needs to exist while the other one disintegrates. And that disintegration is already happening. This is a unique time in history, because now the little guy, like myself, can see what the big money is doing if they are cunning and they desire to know and look. And they can do what the big money is doing, and then they can weather this Great Reset, because they'll be part of a parallel society and economy.
And into this parallel economy, I'm living out and existing in two worlds at this time. While I have my land, I've planted the 4.5 acres of rye. I have a log home that we're refurbishing at the same time. So between me spending times down there and camping in my house, no kidding, I'm camping in my house. And then I come back to my sister's house in the suburbs, or, I go visit my parents and say, hey, can I crash for a few days? We're sanding the walls right now, and we're going to paint this weekend. Can I stay up here because of fumes? It's too a little cold outside. I mean, I guess I could stay on the porch or in the backyard there on my 20-plus acres, but it's chilly at night. It gets down in the 20s. There's a couple guys I know that are running a few restaurants in this little tiny town. They knew I grew microgreens. So, seen your trays. I said, yeah, you know what? I do grow those microgreens. And I go, but if you can give them to us. And I was like, yeah, of course. I got trays. As soon as I set up my racks there and I get all the grow lights on there, I will absolutely. And those are the all spectrum LED grow lights from Hidden Harvest. And I know, Craig, that you use those because you set up your own grow tubes. And it's the solutions like this that are going to help each other get through. And when I said, yeah, I'll bring you a few trays by, and he's like, well, how much do you want for them? And I said, I stopped thinking about money. I don't want to use money as a medium of exchange anymore. I'm beyond money. And he looked at me curiously for a second. He said, you know what? That's great. What do you want to trade for that instead of money? Because he clued onto it right away that I didn't want to trade paper for a thing, and that I wanted to get something of equal value that they had in their coffee shop or restaurant. It could be anything. Maybe they're growing something also that I could trade for that I, can't grow myself, or I can't find, or, like they have coffee beans and different kind of breads and foods and things, whatever. I'm thinking of an equal exchange of my time and knowledge on how to grow that to the most beautiful, succulent, amazing, where you look at those trays of microgreens and go, wow, that's amazing. When you just run your hand over them and you can feel the nature, you can just feel the energy. because I like to look at my plants, feel my plants, and rub my hands over them, feel the growth on them. And, touching and interacting with nature is such a beautiful thing. It's the only way I can really decompress. I walk around barefoot in the yard when it's still in the 50s and 60s during the day, but it drops into the 20s at night. It gets a little bit warm. You got that crispiness under your feet when it's got 50, 55 degrees on the grass. It's been beaten down with the sun for a few hours. I love that decompression, and I love to touch the plants too. It's something about a way to decompress and really relieve that stress. So the more you interact with the plants, like the more you interact with your animals as well. If you never touch your sheep or you never play with your goats, they're not going to know you. They're not going to want to produce for you. That's the same thing. Whether it's an animal or whether it's a plant, if you interact with it, it's going to give you a better yield. The way you resonate with the plants is the way you give the value. And when people look at them, they go, that is the most energetic growth coming out of those trays. What did you do for that?
And how prepared are you for the transition into the grand solar minimum? Are you prepared for emergencies? Our friends at My Patriot Supply do have long-term, storable, and emergency food supplies. The 2-week grab-and-go food crate or the 4-week emergency food supply. They also have a large range of water filtration and items you can use yourself to get ready, such as Mylar bags, oxygen packs, things you can use to DIY your own long-term storable foods, and a host of different survival items that you might not have thought about during your preparations. Use the Adapt 2030 link in the description box below, and while you're there, take a look at the selection of heirloom seeds, because you're going to have to grow some of your own food moving forward into the new Eddy Grand Solar Minimum. Take back your peace of mind by knowing that you're prepared when others might not be.
And then to trade that, instead of money, you got to think beyond money. Like, what can I trade you? And this is the direction we should all think, that parallel economy. And the reason I bring the story up is everybody out in the countryside, does not want to interact in the new paradigm or whatever you want to call that new world that we're moving into. They were out in the countryside long before I got there because they didn't want to interact with the world that we thought was the normal, stable world in 2017, 18. They wanted to get away from that. We're going to create our own reality. We don't want your supermarkets. We don't need your COVID passport to go into your stores. We're not going to buy. We're going to trade amongst ourselves with thousands of people who lived in an area that has been inhabited for thousands and thousands of years of an agrarian society that lived and supported themselves. Farmers, leather workers, Amish, and everybody in between, beekeepers, animal husbandry experts who have the machinery to plow and till and harvest your fields, the persons who have the dryers, the co-op mentality of using your land into a greater good. Because if I only have 5 acres, obviously I'm not going to buy, an $80,000 tractor to come in and harvest 4 acres. That would be incredibly naive to do such a thing. Because for me, I could pay somebody or I can trade the grain for it. I mean, there's always these ways to trade instead of using money. And the more I'm starting to think on how to get outside the money thing here, the money exchange, and that's the parallel economy. Because if you think about the U.S., if you're in a small town, the big towns like you referenced, Craig, that real estate is going to collapse to zero because very few people are going to want to live in those big cities as the chaos unfolds for the next couple of years. Once it stabilizes, then they get the chicken cages in order for people to move back in the 5G grid and the 500 square foot apartment for one person to live in, brand new, all painted, super nice, high def TV there, whatever. People will love that, high speed internet. A lot of people are going to gravitate towards that. All the more power to them. But the real money is moving money out to the real estate. Because if you go back 100 and 150 years, you can start to follow the rail tracks across the United States on how that was put out and where the main towns were for the rail stops and sort of the county capitals. And where was it around your local area that was the main rail hub 100 years ago? These are the areas people are re-gravitating to because the rail tracks didn't get ripped up like the trolley lines in the cities. The rail tracks are still there. They expanded the gauge on them, of course, but the rail track that was there in 1900 is still there right now in 2020. There's very few that were ripped up. Like that's one thing, the magic about rail traffic is almost every rail line that was put in the last 120 years is still there. in terms of major routes going along and regional traffic. Buffett has bought, 80% of the rail lines across the United States, and 80% of all rail traffic Warren Buffett now owns. Like, what did he know to go back and say, hey, wait a second, we're going to revert back to rail traffic. We're going to go back to a more agrarian rural society. And think about that. I want to take you back in time. People didn't use money as much back in 1900. People traded an enormous amount of stuff. If you can can goods, you can trade something canned. This is my first year getting into bee raising and getting hives out on my property. 3 hives. I'm not going to start Supergiant, but 3 hives. So what can I trade for the wax that's coming out of that? What can I trade for the honey that's coming out of that? There's about 150 pounds of honey coming out. You know, what are those tradables on top of that you would use for the wax, or somebody could make lip balm, or there's many things that we can use honey for. But start to think outside the box of using $1 for $1 and think about what your value is, your skill that you could trade somebody for a physical thing. What about if you traded your time and then somebody gave you a chicken, or you traded your time and they gave you eggs, or they traded your time and they gave you hundreds of pounds of grain? And if you have your own grain mill where you can grind your own flour, then you're taking it a step above. You know, I'm always about that self-sufficiency thing. Why don't you buy in bulk right now while you can? The only difference between buying a 50-pound bag of wheat seed or wheat berries, hard red winter wheat berries that you would plant in the ground for a farmer, non-GMO, and you buying a bag of flour at the store, is the machine in the middle that you can buy anywhere and grind your own flour. You can do it electronically, or I have the hand grinder right here, which I'm going to be doing a unboxing on. I just bought this thing here. It's in my hands right here. It is called, let me shake it for you. It's called the hand crank grain mill, and it actually is a hand grinder from Roots and Branches. No, I'm not getting paid by them. I'm just saying I did a lot of research and a lot of reviews, and this was for sure the best one. Like, thousands of people recommended this one as the best hand grinder for the amount of work you do, for the output that you get, and it can grind like 8 or 9 types of different grains. So if you go to a farmer's co-op, you can buy a 50-pound bag of hard red winter wheat, and if you grind it yourself, you got the flour. So Sam, there's so many ways to get outside this squeeze of money that we're so used to. There's getting more self-sufficient, learning little tricks, and learning how to trade. And then on top of that, if we go into the cryptocurrency sphere, and, Craig, one thing interesting, I want to finish off with this. You mentioned that the cold wallets said they're going to want you to do KYC on the cold wallet. How could they possibly force Trezor or Ledger to come in and say, well, you can't have your website on the net anymore unless you get KYC from everybody in history who's ever bought a Ledger or a Trezor wallet? Is that even possible? Is that really feasible? And then if you made a transaction, really, is that even possible that they could know who, what, where, when?
Well, what I've heard from people is that, let's look at Bitcoin specifically, because it's not really a privacy coin. It's private as in if you make a key, nobody knows, a public-private key to transact with, nobody knows who did that. But of course, from what I understand, and I don't have the facts to back this up, but I've been told that the intelligence agencies have been scanning that for quite a while. So they have it kind of figured out who owns what anyway. So it's a little weird. It's that I think they already know, and there's some projects that they've been using to do so, and I just don't have it all right in front of me, but that data has been mined for quite a while. So most likely the intelligence agencies already know what you've got, because they can just simply look at the transactions in the blockchain and they can pretty much figure out who made a new address. So with that said, could they force Trezor? Could they force Ledger to do so? Could they force Monarch? That's a very good software wallet. I think they can if that company is here in the U.S., but most of them are not already because we're too much of a pain in the ass. So most are in friendlier countries. It's hard because, Bitcoin being kind of ubiquitous, it doesn't belong to anybody. So this is a real interesting time. I think we're going to see things get nasty. I really do, because the 3D economy, the 3D control structure, where money has basically been used as a weapon on the people, fiat currency, that system as it disintegrates, because it's just time. It's happening. We're watching it happen. They don't like you leaving. They don't want that to happen. So they're doing their best to regulate crypto. I thought that move to get into everyone's private wallet. The thing is, you can just go, if you know how to do it, you don't even need a wallet. You can make on the blockchain, you can download a node, as they say, a Bitcoin node. You can run it and you can make your own public and private key all day long. You can produce them if you want. I don't even know how they would force people to do that. I actually think part of it is, I don't know if Muchin knows necessarily how it all works. He may or may not, but it's almost impossible technically to do. And I think that the Aquarian age, as we're moving into that, I just think that the parallel economy is too fast. Like, well, we're fast. We can change things in an instant. Like, if you want to hide your Bitcoin, you say, I don't want people to see it. You can put it on a hardware device. People can't really necessarily see it. If you don't want that address to be tied to you, you can push it into a privacy coin. I mean, people do all kinds of stuff. I just think that the crypto world is too fast, and I think that's just Muchin. It's just the current financial system just kind of starting to bare its teeth. I just would make a quick answer and say I don't think they can technically, and I think that people would just move their money out of Bitcoin into something else and hold it there. They'll just put it in a store of value, like a stable coin. They just cannot keep up. I do not think that the control structure can keep up. It's kind of like in the Matrix, where you've got Agent Smith going after Neo. You know, Agent Smith and all the other agents, they had to play by the rules, you know, where Neo didn't. And I think that the cryptocurrency world, the parallel economy itself that we're talking about, banking without banks now, you know, loans against your own crypto, interest being massive on stablecoins. You can get 10, 13% APR on your stablecoins, and that is paid out weekly. We can simply make a slight adjustment, and it screws their whole control structure up. They just can't follow it. And already we've seen some pushback. I'm not sure if it was people in the Senate or the House. I forget which it was and who they were, but they've already sent a big letter, and a lot of people in our Congress basically are getting behind telling Muchin to go off, basically. Like, no, that's ridiculous. So there's already a battle starting before that even really gets off the ground.
A few articles where the Department of Justice is now trying to say that you're not able to issue a new stable coin at all, because they're so afraid that people are going to start parking their money from the U.S. dollars into these stable coins. And the make or die would be a good one for me. Or if you're going to play out and, you know, think about different areas to put stable coins. You have USDC, which I think is going to be used, the Circle stable coin, I think will be used in North Africa as an exchange medium amongst all the North African and Sahel nations. Because right now it's really difficult to trade any of the fiat. Because, I mean, if you're over in Ghana or somewhere or in Mauritania and then you bring a stack of money and you come into the Sudan, it's nigh impossible for you to change it. And if you do, it's going to be like a 25%, 30% exchange rate fee, because nobody else wants to hold it either, because things are really unstable. You got the Central African, what they call is the CAR, the Central African Reserve Currency there. I know that's set in Ghana, Togo, Benin, and they're running off they used to be pegged to the French franc, but now they're pegged to the euro. But when you get to the more obscure countries and you start looking in there saying like, all right, Chad, and then you're going to run up to Egypt and try to change the dinar back and forth. All right, well, if you're going to really want to trade and get this whole North African block moving, you're going to need a stability coin. And they're already talking about USDC, which is Circle. But what is it with major banks and international, again, police coming down on it, Department of Justice from whatever country, mainly the U.S. is the spearhead into this? You can't have any more stable coins unless they're approved by us first. It always comes down to this. Again, a new money system evolves. Too much is leaking out of the sides. And they even feel that 0.1% or 0.5% of leakage is way too much already, because they already see it's just like that small boy who stuck the finger in the dike there. First, it was one finger. All right, we're going to try to plug up 0.1%, 0.5%. Oh, there's another crack over there. Let's try to plug up that 0.5% over there. Oh, wait a second. There's another 1% plug coming out. And as we move forward and people are getting more frustrated with the system, I mean, how long will it take before all the stimulus money, when you go on to universal basic income, is going to be plugged into crypto? Because people are pretty smart, right? You know, maybe the governments take them for idiots, but if you're getting, let's say, $2,000 or let's say $1,500 per month as a universal basic income, and there's 4 of you living in a house, and you got $6,000 coming in for a family, you could easily put $2,000 aside and then shoot it straight into crypto, right? And then people are like, hey, if we put $2,000 into DuByne, or we put $2,000 into Monero, and you could go down the line of it. over time, that's really going to pay off.